Hey guys, welcome back to Skin Anarchy. I am very, very excited about this episode. We are going to be interviewing a brand today that I hold in very high regards. I absolutely love what they're doing in the longevity space, in all ways. And so, without further ado, I want to introduce you guys because this is a really new category for, I think, obviously skin health, but overall, and I think it's really important to shine a light on brands that are doing it in a very ethical way, in a way that really makes sense biologically. It makes sense from the scientific standpoint, and I'm a huge believer in their entire ethos. So without further ado, please welcome Amitay Eshel and Anastasia Khodzhaeva. They are the
Thank you.
co-founders of Young Goose. Welcome.
We're so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having us. We're so excited.
I'm so excited to have you guys. I mean, I've been a huge fan, long before we connected about you coming on the show. I've been following Young Goose very closely, and so very, very honored to host you both.
Same, same. I listen to you in the car when I'm driving. I love the variety of guests you have, so it's a big honor to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, sometimes it's funny when there is a podcast you listen to and then you're on the podcast, you're used to hearing the voice talking
Yeah.
and you're like, "Oh my God, she's talking to me. I need to respond." It's not
Yeah.
it's not a different guest.
Because I'm not just listening this time. I'm actually gonna be talking to you. Yeah. So super
I love
excited.
that. That's very kind of you. I want to dive in, and I really want to start with the idea of like skin as a performance organ. That's not really how most people think about their face, They don't really think about skin in that context. And I would love if you guys could start us off there. I mean, if you can kind of,
Yeah.
get us started. Yeah.
So I think most people nowadays think of their skin as like a canvas, and I think skincare companies, including us, have a lot to do with it. Have a lot of basically have kind of indoctrinated users to think about their skin as a canvas that you need to paint to paint over or fix. We see it as an output system. It affects everything happening inside you, basically, as far as like what Young Goose is looking at. Anything from your stress load to your sleep quality, how well your mitochondria are functioning, your inflammatory baseline. All of those are significantly more detrimental to how your skin looks in the end than something that you will be putting on your skin in order to kind of maybe hide what's going on inside, if you would.
Yeah.
When you think about it, let's say you had a bad sleep, two
Yeah.
nights of bad sleep, you don't really need a blood test to tell you that your skin will show it to you. And if you're overworked, if your gut is off, like actually the skin will tell you everything you need to know about your overall health. So the skin is really the window to your overall health. It's the output of the repair capacity, as we like to say. And you just gotta listen to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for like if your gut is inflamed, your skin will show it. If
Yes.
your cortisol is high, your skin knows.
Yeah, and it's really not vanity to pay attention to that. It's information.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that people don't realize like when your skin is looking tired or dull or just even inflamed, it's not just random. There's something really, it's a story being told by your body, it's biology. And so, I really like that narrative. And I think that's something that we don't really often hear about, in the skincare space because it is so much about quick fixes, like what can I do very quickly to whatever. But I think it's a really nice way to think about it, as this holistic idea. So I want to actually dive into this reduced recovery capacity component because that's really important for, I think, listeners to understand if you guys could kind of shed some light on that.
Yeah. So if we're going to be talking about like what is really stimulus and what is recovery,
Mhm.
when as far as your skin is concerned, stimulus is anything that your skin has to respond to, and that is happening everywhere all the time. So if you got a sun exposure, that's a stimulus. If you applied retinol, that's a stimulus. If you applied chemical peel, that's a stimulus. The flight you took, it's a stimulus. The stressful Monday, it's a stimulus. So even a hard workout at the gym can be a stimulus for your skin that it has to process. So on its own, none of it is bad because that's how your skin really adapts and strengthens. The problem is when the stimulus outpaces recovery. And it's kind of, I think, easy to understand with the gym analysis, like if analogy, if you were going hard at the gym for 7 days and you didn't take rest, that's too much. And you're not going to get stronger. You're actually going to eventually break down.
I think the skincare industry has been lured into basically interacting with something very fundamental in us human beings, which is we're trying to fix things by adding more. And skincare for a very long time, the skincare industry, because the idea at the end of the day is to sell more products, is to be more profitable, kind of played hand in hand in this. So
Yeah.
it had a hand in training people to keep adding, whether it's more actives, whether it's more obviously like professional treatments, more steps in the routine. The entire rise of K-beauty, which we learn from, everybody's learning from it. It's very impressive, inspiring, and great. The rise of it was really by introducing these hybrid products that people added to their routine. And, suddenly they had this 10, 12 step routine. Yeah. So no one's talking about the recovery side, the response by the skin side of the equation, because you can't just keep like depositing stress, depositing instructions into depositing basically stress into an account without making the withdrawals of repair. The way we've built Young Goose, as far as like the Credo product, etc., it's designed around balance. It's designed maybe first to support the skin's own ability to recover and not just piling more stimulus and stimulus. But as a company, we're not anti-active. I think there are,
Yeah.
unfortunately, we see, for example, the hardships that our friends that have clean beauty brands that are going through right now in the implosion of that industry because it became like an anti-active almost industry. So we're not anti-actives. We're pro-recovery, if you would. Even the actives are there is an
Recovery.
supporting recovery is there is a thought there is to how the two have to be in balance, if you would.
Yes. Yes. No, that's actually an incredible insight there because you're very, very correct in that, I've struggled myself as a consumer for a long time in understanding when to use actives, what actives to use, how they really play into this full idea of true regeneration of the skin, renewal of the skin. I think there are so many multiple scientific disciplines that come into the picture here. I think for a long time, I mean, you guys brought up such an important point here is that K-beauty has taught us a lot. I think you're right in the
Hmm.
sense of like you can combine a lot of different ingredients to get a very wonderful effect. But at the
Hmm.
same time, it's also brought up, I think, a few different questions in the sense of like, well, what is dosing and how does that work? And what is synergy of molecules? What is the synergy of biology and physiology? And how does that really play a part? And I think that's when things really come into full lens, right? And the idea of, well, what is skin recovery? At the end of the day, what does that mean? And as an
Actually,
organ,
Anastasia came to me the other day with an interesting realization about because we had someone come to us, like a famous person come to us with this 12-step routine. Their
mm,
assistant actually came to us with a 12-step routine. So it's like, oh yeah, we see that a lot, right? You said something like that.
Yeah, I mean, we see that constantly. People come to us, like Amitai said, with used to be 9 step routine, now it's 12 step routine. I'm sure some people have 20 step routine. And they get treatments also very often, sometimes monthly treatments, professional treatments. But the reason they resort to us sometimes is like the last step is their skin actually looks irritated. It looks inflamed. It looks tired. So they have the opposite effect of what they're chasing. And until they've got to talk to us, their thinking was that they need more. And oftentimes, it's usually the opposite. You need less. You need to protect your recovery. And the people who genuinely get somewhere and get better results is the ones who like figure that part out. What
Yeah.
is how can you let your skin get into the recovery mode? How can you support it? And it's not, doing less. It's not necessarily being uneducated or being lazy. It's actually strategic.
Hmm.
yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree more. And I think this is a really, really important referencing that we've done here, in terms of now we're asking, we're not asking how do I fix this wrinkle? We're more so asking why isn't my skin recovering properly anymore? And that's a huge thing. I think that's a whole different conversation to be had. And I'd love to talk more about this idea of like, the stimulus versus recovery. Can you break that down for us? Like, what does that really mean?
I think we're living under let me start by the fact that we live in a new time in the world. And the conditions that our skin experiences right now are not the conditions that our skin was designed for or gone through evolution, for better and for worse. Some examples are, for example, when we started talking about blue light exposure in 2020, people thought we are out of our mind, as far as
Yeah,
like how it affects the skin. Obviously, chronic sleep disruption is another big talking point. Processed food, daily psychological stress that I think is not talked enough within the confines of skin health. Pollution, obviously, so free radicals that are not native to what our normal environment would consist of. Travel across time zone, travel itself, and the time zone aspect of it. Our ancestors, again, the evolution process we went through didn't, necessarily like need longevity skincare
yeah,
because their recovery load was manageable. The input, right,
yeah,
was native. Ours, the one that we go through as human beings, is not native, is not manageable. So people are aging faster than they would have been on a cellular level, on the level of the DNA. I can't stand the word, by the way, on the cellular level already. We say it so much. I'm looking, if anyone wants to give me an alternative, I'll take it.
yeah,
But people are on the most fundamental level, on the level of our epigenetics, people are aging faster. Our people are getting more and more disruption. And we're starting to not only see, we're starting to feel it. And we're starting to feel it earlier as human beings, skin or not. So the correction model that we've been in for the last 30 years, this paradigm, doesn't apply anymore because you cannot correct or you can't correct fast enough to even keep up with the damage,
yeah, yeah,
Um, correction, the way that we see it, and again, we've been in the industry for a long time, consulted many brands before we started Young Goose. The medical grade skincare model of the last 30 years of adding more and more stimulus is a reactive model.
yeah.
Longevity is proactive. The funny story is that I tried to trademark prejuvenation and failed, but it's proactive, right? It's prejuvenating. In my opinion, the smartest consumers are the ones that are listening to this, that are making the shift right now. But in a very short amount of time, the word longevity is going to stand in place of the word anti-aging. It's going to insinuate whatever anti-aging is saying right now, right?
Yeah, and I think also people are just waking up to the math. Like if you spend $500 on a treatment every 3 months and then results reset and you have to do it again over and over, then where are you really gonna get with it? And the opposite, like if you support your recovery and you support your skin health in a way that something actually start building over the
Yeah.
years, you have compounding effect. That math kind of like works out better. People like don't want quick fixes anymore. The quick fixes, they don't compound, they reset to zero, and the longevity is about building something that gets better over time.
Yeah, I love that, Anastasia, because I think that is really the heart of longevity. And I have seen a lot of, and this is just my I've seen a lot of critique about longevity, right? Across categories, not just skincare, across the board. And it really baffles me because especially in skincare, we're sitting in a category where for so long we were promoting the use of like 20% AHAs on young skin in your 20s.
Yeah.
But now all of a sudden we have a problem with like barrier repair. We have a
Yeah.
problem with
Exactly.
like truly taking your time, letting your organ heal itself over time. I mean, it doesn't make any intuitive sense, and it's almost like the pushback feels a little misplaced to me when I see that.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't, it seems to you misplaced because your vantage point, in my opinion, is a very rare vantage point. And I'll explain what I mean. To a nutritionist, McDonald's does not make sense. It
Yeah.
doesn't.
Yeah.
If the world was built according to the logic of a nutritionist, fast food chains will go bankrupt. But the fact of the matter is that they are not. And the reason is because, again, we're talking, that's the point that we made before. And it's a point that Anastasia has been talking about for, I don't know, a decade. And she made me see the light is that we are, as human beings, we're very bad at looking at, that's kind of what she alluded to, very bad at looking at micro compoundable effects. So one burger is not going to harm you for that matter, but a thousand would, like, or a daily burger is going to harm you. Morgan Spurlock, of course, in his famous movie about McDonald's, will show that he ate every day for 20 days. Anyway,
Yeah, he
so
started losing, for
yeah,
listeners who don't know what Amitay is talking about, he started losing hair, teeth.
yeah.
It was pretty bad.
Yeah. So going back to longevity, all longevity is saying is that at its fundamental level, it is the balance between three things that might skew each other, which is how do we optimize how your skin looks now? This is the silo where, results-oriented skincare is living in, right?
Right.
Resilience and how well your skin is going to look in 10 years if nothing were to challenge it on a fundamental basis. Resilience is how prepared are you for like an extreme event. It could be extreme UV event. It could be that you sunbathed in Aruba for a month, right? But it could
Right.
also be like extreme stress, whatever that may be. That is what resilience looks like, and we can measure it in your skin. And then the end point is how are you treating your skin to kind of preserve reservoirs, if you would, preserve the integrity of the function for years to come. So these things could rob each other. They could live in a silo. If you talked about skin barrier, if we exfoliated every day forever or even for a short amount of time because we need to look good for this interview,
Yeah.
we're going to pay for this later on because we've damaged or we've introduced too much stimulation, which we've talked about. Same
Right.
with resilience. The examples, I think, speak for themselves, right? If I introduce something that challenges my skin and I build resilience, I'm not going to look great. People who are the leaders in like cold ice plunging, right? They don't look good. The
Yeah.
reason they don't look young, okay? The reason
Right.
is they've built resilience, but they didn't, there was no balance there. And longevity, if you only cared about longevity, that's kind of a little bit the implosion of clean skincare. You only care about not disrupting anything. You're not introducing any stimulation. You're not introducing much resilience. You're just kind of making sure you're not harming your skin. That's why the clean beauty industry is not doing so hot right now. So really the combination of the three, finding a middle ground between the three, that's what longevity means.
Yeah, it's beautifully articulated there. I completely 100% agree with you. And I also think that this is an incredible shift that we're going through because it is a lot to wrap your head around, for the
Yeah.
average consumer. I think that's also why we see so much pushback because consumers for so long, we've been fed the marketing, for decades, we've been fed that.
Mhm.
I mean, think back, I love to like kind of go back to our grandmothers and to go back to that era where there was just like Pond's cold cream or, there was
Yeah.
just one product, and I think, and I'm like, they had the idea right. They were using one
Hmm.
thing and they were doing it every night over and over again. And then they would
Yeah.
say 20 years later, this is why my skin looks good because I stuck to
Yeah.
one thing. And I miss that. I miss people taking pride in that. You know what I mean? Like in that way of saying, I have a routine that I believe in and I stick to it and my skin loves that. And there's no,
Hmm.
it's almost like we've shamed that over the years, right? Of this in this
But
mass consumerism.
But I think, yeah, I think also speaking of our grandmothers, they have had less shiny objects in front of them, and a lot of the times there was also like lack of resources depending where the grandmother used to live.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's true.
but I think
But
if
there
we
was
put
also
them,
less pressure. There was less
yeah,
pressure on them to look good at 50,
yeah,
you
Yeah,
know?
that's true.
yeah,
That's true.
all of it
No,
is true.
it's really interesting. I mean, I think that, but here's the thing though. I think when I look at the products now that are coming up, I mean, your line, I think it's beautiful because you guys don't have any redundancies in your products. Everything is meant to serve a purpose. Everything has a role. You are serving a role. And I think that to me is the most fundamental structuring or restructuring of a brand or of skincare that we need to really focus on. You see where I'm going? Like I feel
Yeah,
like brands can learn from that because for so long. I mean, how many times have you guys walked into a drugstore, right? And you see the same product from the same brand and it's like just different percentages. I don't need that. I don't need that much
Yeah.
option, you know. Just give me one and tell me why it works. Does it work? Give me the efficacy and then I'm done. That's it. So,
Yeah.
you know, and that's kind of what I was kind of alluding to also was that there was a simplification there before. And I see with
Yeah.
longevity, we're bringing it back in a lot of ways, you know. But I would love to, you know, kind of talk about why this shift is really happening and talk about more on that compounding effect, I mean, that you were talking about previously, you know, like, can we kind of elaborate on that in terms of like what that means and like what should consumers really understand about this?
I think for consumers, it makes sense because you're doing less, but you're getting more results. And at Young Goose, we really look at what skin aging really is on the cellular level, the expression that Amitay
Yeah,
doesn't like. We really
everything.
look at the pathways and the molecules and if the skin functions as a younger skin, it needs to have certain things in place. And we could, dive into it deeper, but for us, the fundamentals would be NAD plus. So we that's your cellular energy. And if you're as you grow older, you actually have less and less of it. So if you think about it like in terms of your bank account, actually you have less and less money in a bank account as you grow older, but
The
the
expenses.
expenses
Yeah.
that actually the same or even higher. They
Yeah.
manage our expenses better and have some savings. And there another thing that is important when you think about compounding effects and how it affects the skin would be, for example, spermidine, another molecule that naturally every cell has it. And as we grow older, we have less and less. So again, we can think about it in terms of like less money in the bank. But in this case, it's not the currency. It's not what you pay for a repair with. It's actually it turns on autophagy, your cellular cleanup. And then
Mhm.
what you can also think about is like for your house, you need the plumbing and you need the electricity, for a good house. So those two are kind of essentials, and we are really
You
um,
can see Anastasia, by the way, is in repair mode right now in the house. So we should have.
yes, we are renovating.
I want to give
Yeah.
the opposite example to that
Okay.
because I think, these are the examples that we live in. That's just the world that we live in. We see, obviously, we are very glad that there's a lot of discussion around mitochondria right now.
Yeah.
Obviously, we saw Lancome rolling out a mitophagy ingredient in every one of their, which is part of autophagy. It's a subcategory. So Anastasia mentioned spermidine because it covers more bases, but obviously there are other molecules that cover one of the bases, right? That still, I would consider it within longevity. But that is kind of good compounding. Obviously, a lot of people right now are talking about collagen banking. I would
Hmm.
argue elastin banking is where you should go. But yeah, better investment strategy. Let's talk about bad compounding. Again, we talked about like adding more ingredients, adding more treatments, and we can think of aging as the accumulation of unrepaired damage. Why is that? It's because every time we do not resolve an issue in the skin, it contributes to more stress across your skin. So
Yeah.
every time there is damage that's not repaired well, every time there is, a critical, like again, like we can talk about UV exposure, we can talk about the sun because it's obviously something that we all share. But every time there is, sun exposure and there DNA damage and stuff like that, those cells then they don't repair as well. And other things, whether it's wrinkles, whether it's laxity, whether it's hyperpigmentation, whether it is irritation, whatever that may be, redness, rosacea, whatever that may be, are now more prominent. What do we want to do as human beings? We want to use another ingredient. We want to use another treatment. We want to go and do RF microneedling or a laser or whatever that is to go ahead and like tackle that thing that bothers us. The
Yeah.
problem is again, we're in a loop where we're compounding more stimulation and more damage, which our skin, the reason our skin got to where it was is that it could not deal with the amount of stimulation and damage that it had before.
Yeah.
And what we're getting to, even if we've received some temporary effects, which granted there might be, long term, we're creating a situation where our skin is hyper aging in the background.
Yeah.
So, your micro, like not microneedling, but like your radio frequency treatment might introduce some, inflammation that would make you look better in the short term because your skin is now more taut because underneath it's inflamed. But if your skin is now going to create scar tissue underneath because or your tissue is going to create scar tissue because it cannot deal with that stimulation, it cannot repair well. Well, guess what? Later on, that tissue moves less well. It's going to create more wrinkles, more laxity. You're going to be harder to operate on if you're going to want to do surgery.
But also for people that do want to, like Amitai was just leading up to get a plastic surgery or do
Yeah.
some of the treatments, experiment, any of those invasive procedures, as we said in the beginning of the podcast, is a stimulus, right? So banking, like having savings account of the recovery molecules that can support recovery, stimulate recovery, is a smart way, like is a balance. Okay, if you want to try something invasive, make sure you have your recovery in place.
Yeah.
You can recover from it.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is an interesting topic because I've seen it approached in multiple ways. And I mean, my 2 cents, I just want to add also, what I've noticed is that we're not talking also about the idea that your body is in constant like movement, right? So cells are constantly working on regenerating things. They're
Yeah.
constantly working on reducing and, just working with the molecules, right? To make sure they're optimized for use inside of the cell. Now, one of the biggest, I think, arguments, and I don't see a lot of NAD, brands that are using NAD make this, is that it's not about just like Anastasia, as you brilliantly pointed out, it's not about just repleting. It's also about providing a feedback to your cells. Because when they decline, physiologically, what that means is that they are losing the ability to keep up with damage, but that also means that their feedback loops are now slowed down. So that feedback signaling is something that we need to understand. And we need to understand what is the balance between giving it the signal in the right amount so that it allows for the feedback loops to stay operational, but then also optimizes them to back to that state that we want them, right? Because that's what longevity is. You're kind of
Yeah.
rewinding the clock to an optimized
Yeah.
functional state. And so I think that's where it becomes very interesting to me when I look at it as a scientist, because I'm like, there's a lot of potential here when you start to understand physiological feedback loops, and
Yeah.
so I think a lot of the times the marketing focuses on, yeah, we want to replete. You're right. We want to replete. But at the same time, we want to give your body what it normally has so that it can continue doing what it does beautifully by itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think that's where, I mean, I get very excited about longevity. I won't lie. I get very excited about the category because I think it has immense potential, not only from like obviously the use of, topical products and whatnot, but also from what it's feeding to research. I mean, as
Yeah.
scientists, we're learning from this space, constantly. Like I know I have many colleagues in the lab, in wet lab, they have nothing to do with skincare. They have nothing to do with any of these categories longevity is kind of flourishing in. But what they do say is, I like what that brand did. I like what they're spotlighting. I'm going to go and look into that in my own research,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
It's a
That's
beautiful
really
thing to
cool
watch,
awareness there.
you know?
You
Yeah.
know,
Love that.
and
Yeah.
I think, everything that you're saying is very, again, there is cross-pollination. I think most people don't know. So as a brand, what we're targeting is something called the 12 hallmarks of aging, which
Mhm.
are 12 categories on how basically the 12 categories as far as like how our skin deteriorates, ages, etc., everything we talked about until now. And I mean, most people, even in the longevity field, don't know is that they were developed out of the hallmarks of cancer. So I think, and obviously there are, how many people that are applying like an NAD spermidine face serum or exosome serum, right? Whatever that may be, are thinking of the fact that the leaps in cancer research and definitions of how we, categorize cancer expression is kind of the reason that we now have the longevity field and everything around that. I think, again, there is crazy cross-pollination there, even geriatrics, neurodegeneration, whatever that is. All of
Yeah.
those things are feeding back to this compendium of knowledge, which then a company like Young Goose could say, hey, we see this incredible, molecule for that matter. Mechanistically, it makes sense that it's going to do something in skin. Hey, let's take a look at it. And we're doing now a long project where there is a peptide that literally does not have yet a name, doesn't have a name yet with the FDA. So it's very difficult to communicate as far as, regulation. But we're
Yeah.
looking at it as something that maybe is going to come out to market in like 5 years, right?
That's interesting. That's really
Yeah.
interesting. And I want to take this time to kind of dive into one of your hero products, the vampire exosomes. Very bold name. I want to learn more about why you named it the way you did, and let's dive in.
So basically, it's the vampire facial or PRP facials. I think changed the conversation around regenerative aesthetics. Basically, it showed consumers that platelet-derived signaling has powerful repair instructions. Basically,
Yeah.
it kind of set the stage for that. But I think the first problem is accessibility. First of all, it's invasive, it's expensive, it requires a clinic, so there are gaps between the times that you're going to do that. And the results, because it's autologous, because it's your own stuff, they vary. You
Yeah.
need to, the better you are, which you wouldn't have maybe chose the treatment if you didn't feel you need it, right?
Yeah.
The better the results would be and vice versa. Okay.
Right.
So it's the chicken and the egg there. So basically we came to the R&D table, proverbial table, and asked, what if we could encapsulate, we can capture that same regenerative signaling, the exosomes that
Hmm.
carry those distilled repair instructions, which is, by the way, what they are doing also now with facial. So now the advancement in PRP facials is doing what we're doing as well, just in a clinic setting, and deliver them topically, but consistently
Yeah.
That's what we
at home.
decided.
That's what we're doing,
Yeah.
right? That's what we're doing. So that's what, vampire exosomes is. It's platelet derived, let's say, regeneration without a needle.
No,
Yeah.
it's interesting because this, the whole idea of regenerative signaling is very interesting to me. Let's dive into this in terms of, the real nitty-gritty. I mean, I would love for you to go through this, in terms of you've used 3 trillion PRP-derived exosomes. Why does that matter? Why does that number matter? And walk us through the details of the product.
Nastya, I think she does it beautifully.
Okay,
So
I
yeah.
mean, either one of us could do it, but as you know, in your audience, I think already also knows by now. But for new listeners, I will say exosomes are tiny messengers. They're packets that carry the message, and the cells use them to communicate. When your body heals a wound, it uses exosome to coordinate this process of healing, and they carry signals that tell cells to produce collagen, reduce inflammation, renew tissue. So what we've done, why does this matter? So we took over 3 trillion platelet-derived exosomes into a single product, and every batch is tested for dose. There is a verified dose. So when you apply your product, you're flooding your skin cells with the repair signals, telling your cells, okay, it's time to rebuild. It's time to lower the inflammation. All of the signals we talked about that are crucial for repair processes. And the key here also is that the exosomes are not doers. They're their message. So it's your cells, your own cells, that are doing the work. And that's why I think it's so powerful. You work with your biology.
It's not the exosomes that are doing it. They're allowing for the signaling to happen. I mean, I think that really does get lost in translation. I've seen that repeatedly, that people don't seem to grasp that component. And, also more importantly, understanding cell signaling. I mean, I know you don't like, cell biology, but really, we have to signal ourselves at the end of the day. I would love to talk more about, in terms of like when you guys, and I know you've spoken about this also. What was some of the things you had to do research on before you created the product? What were some of the due diligence that you did on your part to make
okay,
sure you were delivering the best?
I'll answer the question. I just want to give you props. What you said right now before about basically like allowing the body to do its own function. It sounds to me, by the way, I love cell biology. I just don't like the word
Just
at the cellular level.
at the cellular level,
I
because
think,
that's what we use,
it's like I'm haunted by this word. I hear it 700 times a day. But
Yeah.
anyway, I just want to give you an idea. That is why we started a podcast. Like we said, so I have a podcast called Biohacking Beauty. We basically told ourselves, hey, who's going to listen to this podcast? In the beginning, it's going to be our customers. They already bought the product. They're going to hear that they're going to understand we have a podcast. They're going to listen to it. We said there isn't an ingredient that we can put in skincare that is going to correct poor sleep habits or poor habits in general, by the way. There is an invisible ingredient that's going to make our skincare work better. And that's how our patient compliance, basically. So how our customers are going to behave. Let's build a communication platform to tell them how we would like them to behave.
Yes.
Hey, you are going to get a few multiples of better skin regeneration if you're going to shut your eyes between 10 p.m. to midnight. That's your golden hour, 10 to 2 in the morning. You do that, you get better skin. You don't eat simple sugar, you get better skin, right? So that's to your point. All we can do is two-thirds. The other third, which I would argue is even more than a third, we need people to do on their own. Unfortunately, fortunately, however you want to call that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also to get back to your question of like with vampire exosomes in particular, what innovation we are bringing to the exosome space, it's also respecting that part of like, okay, exosomes are not doers, your cells are. So, okay, exosomes will tell your cells, okay, we need to get to work. We have repair to do. And looking at like what's the best environment for cells to do that, to act on it. What do they need? So they need cellular fuel, they need NAD+. So in the case of vampire exosomes, we also have a key ingredient there called Rejuvenate D, and that helps your skin cells to utilize their own NAD+ to fuel, the work that cells need to do.
Yeah.
And we talked, I think, a little bit about it on this podcast, and I'm sure your listeners know that NAD+ declines significantly with age. So pairing it with exosome signaling, that really changes how the product works. And that's why, I mean, we get, since we launched the product last year, it's like outperformed everything we've done. We love all of our products equally. They're all our babies, but this baby is just like a top performer.
It's reading the New York Times at a year and a half in bed.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Speaking of more like house renovation analogies, like if your skin cells are a construction crew, then exosomes is the blueprint. The NAD+ is what helps them do the job. It
is the coffee.
them. Is the coffee.
The coffee, yeah, I like
the
that.
food is like
Listen, whoever's renovating,
entire crew, in case if you don't have NAD+, even though there is a blueprint, they're not going to do anything. And the opposite is true too. Like NAD+ without exosomes, okay, it will give them energy to go about their functions. But if you have the best blueprint, know exactly what to do, that's also going to be better. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, that was great.
It all works together.
I want to make sure I cover a few things that came to mind, just so I don't forget them. The first thing you asked, like what kind of special consideration we had to address within this specific product. So first is testing. Unfortunately, first of all, you can't really own a patent within this field. What I'm going to say right now wasn't to make us the only company to fill in the blank. It was to introduce more integrity into this field, which is like a Swiss cheese as far as holes. Okay, it's really insincere. So basically, right now there is no onus. There is no scrutiny that I need to go through after I make claims about my exosomes. So I can say my exosomes are supercharged with what did we say before the podcast started? With good thoughts and prayers. And I don't need to prove any of that, right? Obviously, people claim things about plant exosomes or different types of exosomes as far as their capabilities. Very little needs to be proven. So the first thing about testing is we wanted to have a test that is batch oriented, which means it correlates with the product that you or a consumer bought, and they can see that we validated the amount of exosomes, what's inside, etc. So exosomes are not all the same. Exosomes can be bad, by the way.
Yeah.
We need to test and make sure what's inside of them. It's just the envelope.
It's a message.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
it can be a message of cell death for that matter. Yeah.
Right.
So we have a test that shows, per batch what's inside the exosome and shows that it's at a very high standard, basically. That's number one. It holds us to a higher standard, and we hope other companies follow suit. That's what I kind of tried to allude to in the beginning. It wasn't to make us like a unique product. It was to hope that we would lead the industry towards that direction because no other company does it currently.
Right.
And I don't think so. By the way, of course, I don't know all the companies on the globe, but from what I know, no other company publishes data about their exosomes. The second thing we needed to do before we chose platelet-derived exosomes, we needed to understand what exosomes would be statistically the most potent.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so every exosome that's going to be harvested is going to be slightly different, but statistically, which ones are going to create the most amount of regeneration? So most times that you hear about exosomes, even Ekta, what you said when you described the exosome, you mentioned many, many things that the exosomes have.
Yeah.
But what we care about the most are something called microRNAs,
Hmm.
not RNA, not mRNA, microRNAs. And the reason that we care about microRNAs the most is that microRNAs are like a very unique type of police, if you would, that makes sure cells behave at an optimal fashion at the time of interaction, right? It's not forever, but at the time of interaction. In other words, you have microRNAs within each exosomes that might say, hey, have really good antioxidant defense. Hey, make really good collagen. Hey, lower inflammation. Hey, go after senescent zombie, like bad old cells, right? And statistically, the best types of microRNAs, the most amount of them, the best quality, are in platelets. Why? It's because platelets, as Anastasia said, are those things that are first responders when we have a paper cut, when we have something that needs to be healed in the skin. So, on average, they would have the most amounts of messages that relate to skin health and healing and performance and everything that's got to do with that. So the type we had to do all the testing. And then, exactly like Anastasia said, 99% of ingredients that someone's going to be trying to use with exosomes are actually going to harm the exosomes. So when they're going to live together in the bottle, they're going to damage the exosomes.
Yes.
Some things that people would know are like peptides, vitamin C, acids, like really most of the actives that you could think of, even a lot of the NAD precursors that we use with other products cannot be combined with exosomes, like
Yeah.
NMN, NR, whatever. So these are kind of the three pillars that we needed to figure out. And if exosomes work topically, they're going to dry out the skin. They're not going to dry out the skin. Your skin's going to be drier. Part of their effect, that turnover, etc., you're going to feel like your skin is drier. So we needed to go through all the ingredients that actually can be used, or sift through ingredients and what can be used to find out how we can support skin barrier within that limited amount of ingredients that we can use.
Yeah.
So supporting it with NAD, supporting skin barrier so we don't dry the skin out, and ramping up significantly the amount of exosomes that we have there.
That's very, I mean, I love that you went through that. And I think it's interesting because you're pointing out, I mean, you've done your very best to do your due diligence, but you've pointed out a very important topic here, Amitay, and I think that's the idea that there's a lot that needs to be understood, about how to use exosomes and topicals. And I think that's what's differentiating right now. When I look at the space, I've interviewed a lot of brands that are utilizing exosomes, but one thing that I think is a huge differentiating factor is exactly what you said, which is there's a lot that you cannot combine in a formulation
Yeah.
with them. There's a lot that needs to be understood about their bioactivity and what elicits the actual bioactivity and what hinders it. And I think a lot of times we fall into the trap of thinking, okay, if we're claiming that they're there, then they're there. People will talk about electron microscopy and they'll talk about, well, can you see them under microscopy and all that? But it's like, I beg to differ because I think seeing them is one thing, but then, watching their activity is another thing. And so those kind of topics, it's just simply not being addressed right now on the manufacturing side, right? The labs that are creating them. And this is kind of a message, if anyone's listening on the lab side, right? Like the academia side, I think it's worth creating these tests that are accessible to companies, because it's not that companies don't want to do their due diligence. It's just that it's very expensive. If you go
Yes.
You're
out
right.
there and you want to do your own ELISA, you want to do your own bioactivity testing on these products batch by batch, you want to make sure that every batch is the same, right? That kind of stuff. That's millions and millions.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
we got quoted $1 million retainer.
yeah. I
There you
mean,
go.
like you said, I wish it was more accessible, but then I think, and I hope that brands will find a way to do it. But we held off launching our product, until we were in a position to do that because we wanted consumers
Yeah.
to have as much visibility to what they're getting because it is on a prices side. So, it comes with extra
Yeah, like Spider-Man said.
certifications and receipts.
No, it's absolutely, I agree. But I mean, I really applaud you guys for going that extra mile. I think that's wonderful. And I think it's really definitely setting a standard in the industry. And I love that you're doing that, because anyone who wants to do exosomes, they're now gonna think, like there's a brand out there they're gonna challenge me on how much science, how
Yeah.
much thought I've put into this, and if I'm
Yeah.
just selling a marketing claim or if I'm actually able to speak on testing and all of those things. So it's a
Yeah.
wonderful thing. I want to move on. There's a beautiful product in your lineup, the blue peptide spray. Let's dive into this and what really was the driver behind you wanting to create a product like this?
For sure, the blue peptide spray. When we were thinking about this product, we really wanted to be part of everyone's day and life. And like with exosome product, it's a ritual, right?
Yeah.
You have to wait. You have to really think about what can I mix it with, what can I layer. Like it's a ritual, and it's some thinking is involved here when you apply it. With the blue peptide spray, we wanted it to be like more like easier, right? And really what it is, it's a mitochondrial optimizer in the mist. So the hero ingredient is methylene blue. It improves mitochondrial efficiency, reduces oxidative stress. We combine it with the NAD support. So NAD plus complex that we have. You mentioned copper peptides. So we have
Proprietary, by the way. Yeah, you
NAD
did.
plus
Yeah.
complex, yeah, proprietary to us. Put a lot of thought and effort
Yeah.
into it. Since bringing NAD plus precursors into skincare, we've changed it a lot as more science comes to light and more molecules are accessible. Anyway, so you do have like in this mist, like everything that your mitochondria would thrive with and you could optimize its function, it's in this spray. So I stopped at the copper peptides. So we have copper peptides there for collagen signaling and superoxide dismutase, known as SOD, to neutralize free radicals. And it's such a fun product, as you mentioned. It's light, it's fast. You can put it over makeup. I envision people really taking it with them throughout the day as a boost because
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
as Amitay mentioned in the beginning, right? The conditions changed so much. He talked about travel. He talked about blue light exposure. There's pollution. There is so much that's like constantly bombarding our skin, and you have this spray that you can just use every time your skin needs a little pick me up and needs a little boost. It's there for you.
I think if you look at most hydration products, I think first of all, we would love it if we were confident to introduce products that are used in ways that are not traditional.
Mm.
But 99.999% of the time, it's not a good idea. You don't want to introduce a product someone needs to use at 11:45, just before noon when the sun is at a certain angle and a full moon
Wait,
is out.
get the ladder again.
Yeah. But the reason you don't want to do it is because you want to kind of attach to what people are doing already. It's difficult to make yourself remove your makeup at night, let alone, create a multi-layered routine. So, but sometimes there are opportunities like that. I think most hydration products are, since they sit on the surface, since they work to kind of just prevent transepidermal water loss to that matter, it's very rigid as far how to use them, how can you use them over makeup, can you not? This is a product that really works we found another level, on the mitochondrial level, okay?
I like that.
On the level of what creates energy in our skin. We mentioned NAD, that's a part of it, but you could really think of it as helping your skin cells make more energy so they can repair themselves. That's the point. And that is why intuitively it's so easy to reach for it every time you're in subpar conditions. You're walking down the street, there's pollution, you are in an airplane, you are in front of your computer, and you have a lot of blue light. So all of those things, it's very easy to reach for it and just use it throughout the day. And we're very proud of this versatility and its ability to help.
I love it. I have such a pet peeve against sprays. And I've said
Yeah.
that, I think I've said this before, but I mean, for anyone out there that loves sprays, my apologies, but I can't use them. Like the mists that everybody's coming out with, because, and I use them, I'm a grease ball at the end of the day. I
Yeah.
look like I'm a, disco
Mhm.
ball. And so I've always loved products that don't like add that extra heaviness, And so you have obviously, I mean, it's brilliant thinking on the side of like the actual signaling and what my skin is getting, but also just the consistency of it, right? Like the feel, the user experience. Well, I want to move on because you guys, you're doing something very unique, and this is something I have not been able to talk about on the podcast, and I really want to dive in, is this idea of protocol thinking. When I was introduced to this, I think I made a post on LinkedIn a while ago about thinking in the side, like in the sense of protocols rather than like individual products. And a lot of people gave me feedback, but I was like, well, why aren't we talking about it? So I want to dive in. The LADR, what is that? And then let's dive into what protocol thinking actually means in the context of skin health. Yeah.
LADR, it's our light activated DNA repair serum. And the key ingredient there is actually DNA repair photosomes. So those
Mhm.
are the enzymes that are literally activated by light, best by red light. And when light hits them, it triggers DNA repair at the cellular level.
Mhm.
And
At the DNA level.
yeah, it was some mitochondrial energy. And we've supported the job of DNA repair enzymes here. Everything that the cells and those enzymes will need. So there you have the NAD plus Apex that we talked about here. So we're going to boost NAD plus there. It stimulates collagen production, reduces inflammation. We've also included spermidine that I mentioned earlier to activate autophagy, so your cell's cleanup process. Plus, it's one of the products that has ergothioneine in our lineup, so to protect your mitochondria from oxidative stress. And the protocol here is that, for those, so many, I'm sure of your listeners already have red light therapy.
Yeah.
And if you are not supporting the red light therapy alone, you can only get that far. And we can talk a lot about the fact that there is also, like, as part of red light therapy, there will be oxidative stress, which is kind of a eustress. You need to like signal that repair, but there is certain kind of ceiling on results you can get with the red light therapy alone. So if you support it like with this product, with ladder product, you get much faster results. So you can do shorter red light exposure, like 10 to 15 minutes, instead of like doing it for 40 minutes. Yeah, and you don't have to do it every day. You can do it just 3 times a week. So I think a lot of people in longevity space and like self-optimizing, some people call it biohacking space. It's all about how can I do less, and that's also kind of what we're here for, doing less and getting more results. So if you already have red light therapy, this product is best used with it, because if you use it without light, you kind of leave half of the results on the table. But the good news that if you don't have red light therapy, you can also apply this product and expose to the natural light, best by sunrise and sunset, that has the red wavelengths. Yeah, that's a little bit about this product. And the results that people are seeing, they report to us that a lot of people introduced it obviously after they already had red light therapy. So they already saw what red light therapy can do along. And then when they saw that, wow, like since introducing it, I can actually see results faster, that's very rewarding.
Yeah, and I think, this is something that I can't say, oh, this is where it got introduced, that the idea of compounding or the idea of
Whole thing.
protocol thinking. What was it, looking at how drugs interact? Did pharma look at it first? Is it integrative practitioners, integrative medicine practitioners? I don't know, but protocol thinking can go way beyond skincare. We did mention sleep, we did mention light, we mentioned all of those things, but it could be also the supplements you're taking. It could be, if your skincare doesn't work anymore, especially like peptide skincare or skincare that has a lot of calls for repair. It's not that the actives are not there anymore. Sometimes they are in the case of in some antioxidants, but for the most part, the actives are there. your skin is just like depleted.
Yeah.
So it could be how you support your mitochondria, how you support energy, how you support, your magnesium levels are extremely important for skincare to work, for example, or zinc, for example. We know, just as a side note, we know high levels of zinc are going to make your Botox last longer, as an example, right? Like
Yeah.
there's many things that work in synergy, and we can think of them as protocol thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for us also protocol thinking, like Amitai mentioned, is giving this information to all our users, and most of the time it's in the form of podcasts because there we have long-term
Yeah.
format. So we record like, okay, sleep optimization as a skincare tool, and then you'll have a protocol of like everything you can do to improve your sleep and the way it affects skin in particular. Or we did one for barrier repair and all the steps you can do, or when it comes to sun protection or mitigating pigmentation, there's like protocols, max, like starting, going diving deep about
I think we have facial
supplements and everything. Yeah.
I think we have facial exercises to do in front of a red light panel. I think
Yes.
even that. So there are many layers to that,
Yeah.
right?
So
Yeah.
that's also like the protocol thinking. It's not only in like the fact that, yes, if you look at, let's say, our products, they're kind of a protocol, and you can see how just the line is a protocol in itself, but it's beyond of that. We give you more tools beyond products, and yeah, we try
It's
to
the
share
logic. It's
that.
the logic.
Yeah.
You're building a logic out. And I think that's what draws me to this, right? And I mean, when I first, I think you were right when you said, I think pharma came up with this, which it had to,
Yeah.
because when you look at drugs, there's always a protocol. There's not a single, doctor in the world that would say otherwise, because
Yeah.
drugs, I mean, think about it. We look at everything with drugs, right? We look at what else are you taking? When are you taking it? In what dose? Do we microdose? Do we, everything is that can possibly be considered, we consider it. Lifestyle changes, all of it. So this is a topic that I think, yeah, if there's anything we want to adopt from the drug development world, it should be protocol thinking, because
Mhm.
that is mimicking the human body. And that's why I mean, I love that you guys are doing that. And I love that you've incorporated that into the DNA of the brand, because
Yeah.
this actually reframed skincare. It optimizes skincare. And I feel like, I hope in the next 10 years, right? People are going to be asking that question of, well, what's best for me during this time, this phase of my life? You know what I mean? Like for women, for example, Anastasia, perimenopause, menopause, we go through so many changes. Our skin changes. I would love to see that conversation one day when we're going to our doctors, going to our estheticians and saying, give me the protocol I need for this decade of my life,
Yeah,
and
We're actually,
actually,
yeah,
in early, like I think 2020, I remember I wrote a post on social media about syncing your skincare with your cycle, which at the time was pretty revolutionary as well, because
yeah,
yeah, it's not just the decades, right, which is very true, and a lot of our clients are, perimenopause, menopause, but even when you do have a cycle, you have like monthly fluctuation of hormones. That you have your skin changes, and how can you adapt to it, and not have everything that comes with it, like hormonal acne or whatnot.
right,
There are
right.
yeah.
ways to look at how it affects skin.
I-
Yeah.
by the way, you want to talk about again a paradigm shift of, a big subset of people is obviously GLP-1s, and how that
Yes.
weight loss, injections in general, and how they will affect skincare. I mean, shout out to Image, a very, very cool company, very cool skincare company that decided that they're making a product designated for people who are going through with GLP-1s.
Hmm.
Do I think it's needed? Probably not, because you are still an individual past that. You're not now a category of people as a whole. But I think it's a really cool idea that they went that way, right?
Like
What?
looking at, as Ekta was saying, there are certain things that
Yeah,
affect your skin from the different levels, be it hormonally,
yeah.
be it like what you do to yourself through peptides, and just really serving the
Yeah,
people.
but spoiler alert,
Mhm.
we're actually, so this is a part of Young Goose that we're building right now under the surface. So very soon we're going to launch an AI kind of camera ability to kind of decipher what's going on, and pretty deep level, but a level that AI allows us now.
Yeah.
And what we're going to launch through our partners in clinics, because we have 140 clinics in the States that offer Young Goose. And, if someone goes to the website, they can kind of search which one's closest to them. We're going to have a dry blood spot test that tests how your cells create different ingredients for your skin. It's called metabolomics. So not
Yeah.
metabolic, but metabolomic testing. And we'd be able to, of course, we're a skincare company. We're going to, your physician's going to be able to recommend products, obviously, to
Yeah.
what's good for your
Like
skin.
you can actually track the metabolites, you can retest, right?
Yeah.
So you can actually now with testing track your skincare products. Like you apply them and you see what's actually changing in your body. What did
That's
the level
brilliant. That's
of an
brilliant.
plus actually go up and
Yeah.
etc. So that's something we've been working on for a really long time. We were looking to launch it like 2 years ago,
Yeah.
but it has to be perfect. So
It has to be perfect. And our hope is that, practitioners are going to be empowered also to recommend things past skincare, again, like supplementation, lifestyle
yeah.
habit, things like that. Because as we said, everything works together. At the end of the day, if you only use skincare to interact with those deficiencies, are you going to get better results? Yes, but we want to obviously create better humans, that function better, that have better cellular function as a whole. So
As much of time and effort we put into like educating our consumers, we also educate our wholesale partners. We have a program that we're like almost done creating that will support also this rollout, so they actually are much more versed in that longevity space and how can they support their patients to get better results and to work not just with our products but yeah, in general, be like kind of longevity, skin health certified and have that background because they weren't taught that at schools and not everybody has the time to sift through the research. So having the place where they can do that
That's
is
amazing. I'm
paramount.
really excited to hear that. That's actually very, very brilliant because, I mean, exactly to your last point, there's nowhere to learn this stuff. And I mean, you
yeah.
can go through, I mean, I've gone through what, like 30 years of my life in medical training. And I can tell you honestly, I learned more in a month of life than I learned in school. So we don't learn any of this stuff, and it's really, really difficult to, I think, understand longevity for a lot of physicians. I've seen a lot of physicians try to, and this is feeding into my next question for you guys is like this idea of like, what really is biohacking? What are we optimizing? Like a lot of physicians are having a hard time wrapping their heads around it, especially in the skin health space. But I think you're right in the sense of like, let's give them a framework, and providing them the data, I think is going to be really, really intuitive on their end to be like, oh, okay, this is what it means. This is how I can incorporate this into my patient care, into my actual education that I do with patients. That's huge. So really hats off to you guys for thinking ahead like that. That's amazing. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, my next question though, I want to introduce my next question, which is really what is that balance between like biohacking and maybe over optimizing? I mean, I would love your words of wisdom on that topic because we hear biohacking a lot these days, but I think it's
Yeah.
being misused also, in some
First
ways.
of all, I think intuitively I mean, the problem that we have, well, Anastasia and I love the biohacking community. It is our home,
Yeah.
and we are very grateful to this community to this day. Every time we go to a biohacking conference, that's, the best thing that we have going on this year, that year, and this year too. However, the problem we have with the biohacking community, the word is that it is very aggro. It's very forceful. And I think, it's running the risk everywhere, but specifically in skincare, turning it to another form again of stress, of just like pushing further than physical limits. So
I mean,
yeah.
we do think about it constantly, talk about it constantly. The biohacking world can be obsessive, and people are tracking everything. They're so busy worrying about optimizing everything, and it can be really scary to mess up or forget the step, so all of it could result into like more stress, bad stress. And our philosophy when we're calling ourselves a biohacking skincare, it's actually like to remove the extra steps and then remove the overthinking and like to simplify, that's don't add more products, make the ones you use work harder. And that's why we kind of have this framework of addressing all 12 hallmarks of aging. Because, if you choose your protocol, which in our case, protocol does not have to be 12 products. It could be easily like, 3 to 4 products, but they will address all of those needs and stack and compound everything you need long term. So that's really, I think, how we think about it.
Yeah, I think 12-step routine is possible. Just to for everyone who is into their 12-step routine, if you're that person like Anastasia is, not saying about the amount of products that she uses, but if you're a person like Anastasia that have seemingly endless amount of output of the amount of energy that she can dedicate in every little thing. She's a co-CEO of a company, mother, creator, writes everything, oversees everything, does a 12-step routine, does her facial exercises in front of red light in the evening. Ta, 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 ta. Guess who's not like that? That's this guy.
Yeah.
Pointing at himself for those who are listening.
Well, that's why she looks amazing, though. I mean,
I agree.
she's radiant.
I agree. But the thing is this, if you are that person, if you can match this level
Yeah.
with, being very mindful and everything else, we talked about, a little bit about diet, other biohacks like red light hyperbaric oxygen therapy, HIIT training, optimized nutrition, blah, 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 and you want to push your skin further and you have the ability to be very mindful with every product, see how you react to every product, build carefully and stack things, do it, go for it.
Yeah.
But most people, my opinion is that, of course, it's not only my opinion, but my experience is that it is true that we have decision and attention fatigue. And
Yeah.
it is our responsibility as a brand to say, we don't want to be your entire decision journey during the day or your entire intention journey during the day, because again, we're shooting ourselves in the foot.
Yeah.
We want to both, I call it, we have two budgets. We have financial budget and we have attention budget. We want to encroach on your budget to a degree which you are comfortable in.
Right.
So for me, for example, it's about 3-4 products maximum. I'll do that and I'll have enough output available, enough bandwidth available, do hyperbaric oxygen therapy or
Right.
do something else that's very good for my health. Never mind, I don't want to brag with the wellness things, but we do wellness things as well, and they're important as well. And make sure my diet's on point and I'm not being lured that the mashed potatoes are not calling me too forcefully, right?
I mean, it's important to realize that the nervous system doesn't care if what's in your skincare products, what's in your formula, if the whole ritual gives you anxiety and you're just in a constant like
mousetrap.
The hamster wheel.
Okay,
Hamster wheel.
hamstering,
Yeah.
hamster wheel.
We saw it with the nutrition.
Yeah.
I
mean, we just really want that the skincare ritual with us would feel like doing less and getting more as a result, and that's the whole point.
Yeah, I remember now everything is diverging, but when we started again, we had a consultancy in the biohacking space before starting on Goose, and we were involved in a lot of industries that now seem separate, like ketogenic diet, for example. That's part of biohack.
Yeah.
2015, those were the same people. They weren't different. It was like keto, peptides, biohacking. It's the same people, right? So I remember talking to people as far as nutrition and the way they talked about the amount of attention they gave to their nutrition every day. Testing, whatever, 700 monitors on them, and they read all the latest articles and stuff like that, and you were like, wow, I am not you, but thank you for paving the path. I'll pick and choose whatever I can do, right?
Yeah.
So but we do know people that have developed a very stressful relationship with healthy eating, and it became unhealthy for them to obsess about healthy eating. And in skincare, we cannot do that. In skincare, the minute we are starting to introduce negative emotional inputs, into people's psyche, again, as a brand, we're gonna give you less results. So
Yes.
it's a very fine line if we are interested in having a relationship with our customers for, for 10 years, for 20 years, for 30 years, which is what longevity skincare is supposed to be doing.
Yes, absolutely. No, very well said. And I've learned so much in this conversation. Honestly, you guys, I can't thank you enough. I mean, this is the exact kind of, I think, thinking that we need to propagate in this industry because there need to be more intelligent questions asked, right? At the end of the day, like we can't keep going, as Anastasia you said, the hamster wheel. We got to get off that hamster wheel. And we have to make
Yeah.
a new wheel, like let's
Yeah.
Yeah.
get off. And so, I mean, things like, youthful skin as a behavior. That's a huge takeaway from a conversation like this, and then the whole conversation around recovery capacity and understanding what, sequencing of, anything is, right? And the biology and the logic and physiological logic of these kind of products. That is something that it's not going to happen overnight, but I really feel like once people start using products like this in a meaningful way, you will see results that are just incomparable to anything else, And I think I would tell you, you had said this at one point in the conversation, you said about the whole, instant, or I don't know, I think Anastasia, you said this about the instant gratification thing, where it's like, even if
Yeah.
you go to get something done, you're going to have damage down the road,
Yeah.
And that's what I think consumers have to start understanding is that you can get whatever you want done, but there is going to be an aftermath. Your skin doesn't forget, no organ forgets. Like we talk about this, and I have a, background in GI. I can tell you with the liver, right? Like the liver is one of the most regenerative organs in our body, but the liver never forgets. It has
Yeah.
thousands of enzymes working so that it can deal with all of your stuff, and then it
Yeah.
remembers what it can and cannot tolerate, and it remembers its thresholds, and every organ works like that. So I think when
Yeah.
we start thinking in those terms, we reprogram a lot. Whether it's psychological, whether it's, biological, it doesn't matter. We're doing a reprogramming. And so, anyways, without me ranting too much, I think this is amazing. And I can't thank you guys enough for this wonderful conversation. I've learned so much.
Thank you so much for having us.